Hello, everybody. This is Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is Election Edge. 6 o'clock on the East Coast, 3 here on the West Coast. Happy to have you with us today. And folks, we're going to start off with some really delicious news for you. And we're going to take a little break from the presidential race for just a few minutes and go over some results that happened in Missouri last night. The esteemed squad member, Cori Bush, one of the most radical members of Congress, was defeated. Yes, it's one Democrat for another, but the fact that now this is two squad members, first Jamal Bowman, now Cori Bush, it's at least good to get a little bit of sanity back into it. And I'm joined by a very special guest today, political consultant Woody Johnston. Woody, welcome to Election Edge. Happy to have you with me today.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Hey, listen, so you heard the intro there. First, Jamal Bowman lost about a month ago. Cori Bush loses last night. She throws a temper tantrum today. You know, for those of us on the right or center right of the political spectrum, Cori Bush is not exactly the favorite member of Congress. What do you make about the fact, Woody, that now we've had two of the illustrious members of the far left-wing radical caucus, the Squad, go down to defeat?
Well, I guess I could say Ilhan Omar's probably next. As a guy who works in Republican politics, I'm upset that we won't be able to raise as much money off of every terrible thing they say. But I think what we've seen is that there's a price to pay when you have politics that are way outside the mainstream of American politics, and when you take such a radical stance on things like defunding the police or siding with terrorist groups like Hamas.
I'm with you in that camp 100%. I mean, AIPAC, which is the American Israeli Political Action Committee, they poured $8 million into this race to defeat Cori Bush, and she lost by 5 points to her Democratic opponent. And I just couldn't be happier. A guy named Wesley Bell. It really doesn't matter the name of the person that beat him, just the fact that the Democratic Party, even for Democrats in the age of the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, Woody, were smart enough to say, hey, enough is enough. You know, we do not want to have the police defunded from our neighborhoods. There's already enough crime in them anyhow. And for the life of me, the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, she actually came out and supported a terrorist organization. I mean, Woody, we've seen the country swing to the left at times, but you know, with Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, I mean, that is the fringest of the fringe. And it just gives me a little bit of comfort to know that at least there's still some bit of sanity in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, but at the same time, I think there's still plenty of Democrats who probably believe the same things. They just don't want to say it out loud. I mean, frankly, we've seen Joe Biden try to play both sides on this. I believe that Kamala Harris is, frankly, from that Hamas wing of the party, but she's just a little bit quieter about it.
A little bit quieter. She's a lot quieter about it. I mean, look, her infamous non-show when Benjamin Netanyahu came to speak to a joint session of Congress, you know, that should have been the telling clue right there. She attended a sorority reunion instead. I mean, what's more important, the sorority reunion or Netanyahu? Well, you know damn good and well why she didn't go to that joint session of Congress. And then, you know, the silence, you know, coming out of her related, you know, to the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party. Woody, I submit this to you. College students are getting ready to come back. The Democratic convention is going to be coming up very soon. Do you anticipate that Hamas wing, for which Bowman and Bush were sort of the linchpins of in Congress, are they, now that they've got two left-wing candidates, will the Hamas wing continue to protest in Chicago at the convention? And will these protests return to these college campuses?
Absolutely. If anything, they're probably going to intensify. We're going to see a lot more of it. And frankly, I know AIPAC doesn't play to one party or another. They just, they have one issue that they care about. But frankly, they should be spending a lot of their energy making sure that they have a president who actually supports Israel, and that only person who does is Donald Trump.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right on that, Woody. Hey, Woody, for our viewers and listeners' background, why don't you give a little bit about your background? You've been involved in some high-profile congressional races. You've taken candidates that didn't have a whole lot of money, and you got them across the finish line. So, share with our viewers and listeners a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So I am the CEO of Revere Solutions. We're a political consulting firm, strategy firm based out of Las Vegas. We work to help Republicans win elected office at all levels, everything from dog catcher to president. I've had the pleasure of polling races recently. I was the only pollster to accurately predict the Nevada primary that no one else polled correctly. Um, Famously, Nikki Haley lost to none of the above. None of the above is a unique Nevada option, so she lost to nobody. I was the only one to predict that, and we've built a specialty in helping candidates who aren't necessarily the most well funded, the most that have the establishment behind them, but need to spend their money wiser. We campaign conservatively because we have to.
Woody, you mentioned that you had predicted that Nikki Haley situation there. You're in the state of Nevada right now. Polling is showing Nevada is very, very close. Donald Trump had about a 6 point lead in Nevada when Joe Biden was his opponent. It's now tightened. I've seen some polls where Harris is plus one or two. I've seen polling where Trump's plus one or two. How do you see the state of the race in your home state of Nevada, and what's driving the numbers right now?
Well, I think we're seeing the power of the legacy media still that still exists. What we saw when after that disastrous debate performance is we saw something that I've probably never seen. The media really just turn on Joe Biden. That was their propaganda piece for a long time, and say Joe Biden needs to drop out. Joe Biden needs to drop out. And you saw Biden's numbers tank even further. And then as soon as the switch was done, all of a sudden, every single piece of legacy media was saying how great Kamala Harris is, how wonderful for the country this is. And we're seeing the results of that. So Kamala's on a high right now. She's, honestly, if the election were today, I'd say there's a pretty good chance she'd win. She's ahead in Nevada right now. And but I think as people start to get to know Kamala Harris and realize how radical she is, and once we get past this honeymoon phase that we're still in, by Labor Day, I think things are just going to start mellowing out.
Woody, there's been a lot of talk that if this election were about the issues, then Donald Trump would be leading in this race right now. But if the race turns out to be about Donald Trump, then he could still win, but the odds are lower if the conversation continues to be about Donald Trump. When Joe Biden was in the race, much to the Democrats' chagrin, all the conversation centered around Joe Biden, his absolutely disastrous debate performance. And then obviously when Trump, went through the near assassination, the attention was not on Donald Trump. The attention was on Joe Biden. So are you buying this is not just mainstream media saying this is conservative media. I'm seeing it everywhere that if Donald Trump can get back to focusing on these issues in the election, such as the economy, such as what's going on at the border, the crime issue, the inflation issue, are people better off now than they were 3.5 years ago? Or were they better off during Trump's presidency? Personally, I'd like to see him get back to that.
Yeah, I think so too. And with the Japanese market crash, I think we're gonna, and we're starting to see the results on that. I mean, I just got a notification that the solar company on my house, just went out of business, probably as a consequence of that. And as we see that trickle down, and we see that this is a result of the failed policies of the Biden-Harris administration, and it becomes a policy to policy point of view. Yeah, Trump will win, but I think you'll find that that's just not how most voters are. That's the nerdy stuff. At the end of the day, the stuff that unfortunately wins elections is sound bites and messaging to the right people. And I'd like to see how this, when this debate happens, how that will shake things up. And I believe Trump will will beat Kamala Harris in that debate, and that will create a whole new situation.
Well, I think he will too. But one thing I do not want to do is undersell her, because although she has given zero, I mean, folks, literally zero interviews with the press since Joe Biden dropped out, she hasn't expanded on any of the policy positions. None. I mean zero.
Yeah, last check, I think her website doesn't even have any policy positions.
You're right. It does not. So, but I'll tell you what we can do. And Woody, I don't know if you've seen this or not. Madam Producer, if we can play that Dave McCormick clip that talked about what Kamala Harris's positions were prior to her becoming the nominee of the Democratic Party. And then let's contrast those positions, Woody, with what she is talking about now.
Kamala Harris is inspiring and very capable. The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
The nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes.
What is the solution for voters in the fossil fuel industry?
Giving the workers an ability to transition. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position you agree with?
And we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Outdated, it is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What would people
Yes.
to reduce red meat specifically?
Yes.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
So for people out there who like their insurance, well, they don't get to keep it.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on. I am opposed to any policy that would deny any human being public health, period.
The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
Those positions are frightening. I mean, those positions are to the left of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, banning fracking, and particularly in Pennsylvania, is pretty untenable. She supports the Green New Deal, and there was this idea that maybe she'd pick a moderate to balance the ticket, but frankly, Waltz is the same on all those issues as well.
Yeah, and there's other pieces too. I mean, now she's come out and said, "Oh no, I'm okay with fracking, particularly in Pennsylvania." Now she's come out and said, "Well, we don't necessarily have to have, Medicare for all. We can still have private health insurance, and maybe we don't need to ban all offshore drilling." But again, look at what she is trying to. Now, as we talked about, there's nothing on our webpage. There are no policy positions. So we really don't know. But Woody, I'm guessing this, at the Democratic convention, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't they have to put out what their policy positions are at the Democratic convention?
Technically, no. I mean, if they don't adopt a platform, they'll just adopt the last platform. That's typically what happens. And gosh, that was a while ago. I mean, imagine it's still pretty radical, but I think that that her not putting her policies on there is very purposeful, because even the Democrats realize how out of touch their policies are. They have to campaign on personality. They have to campaign on likability. They have to campaign on feelings, because if it became a policy-driven battle on what works and what doesn't work, they would always lose.
Well, you're right about that. And Donald Trump and his campaign got to be cognizant of that, because Waltz and Harris are out on the campaign. And I think Trump doesn't have a next event until either Friday or Saturday. All right, we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to dive into some of those identity politics pieces. We're going to go through the polling numbers, and we're going to really dive in and see what is the state of this race, and can Trump stop this momentum. Be back shortly.
Former national
Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
And we're back. Much thanks to Dr. Kirk Elliott. What a tremendous company they are. They've been a friend of Patriot TV. They're a great sponsor and a believer in what we're doing at Patriot TV. Gold prices are near all-time highs. Silver prices are up there. Folks, reach out to Dr. Kirk Elliott and his team. They're among the largest gold and silver dealers in the country, and they will take great care of you. Great organization, and we're very proud to have them as a sponsor. Okay, Woody, back to the Democrats here. You know, we talked about, what the Republicans are doing, talking about issues. But Woody, it seems like the only thing that the Democrats want to talk about is race, nationality, identity, gender. They always throw abortion in there, of course. I'm not even hearing much about the democracy argument anymore. It's almost like pure identity politics. And yet, Woody, it seems like
they love calling us weird.
Yes, they like calling us weird. That was weird itself. I mean, but you know what? Let's talk about this just a second. Waltz is the one that literally started that, and it caught fire like a California wildfire. So do you think that was one of the reasons that Waltz was picked? Because she really liked him on camera and just felt that, he wasn't going to be an attention grabber and he'd be good support for her?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely believe that. I also have heard that that Kamala Harris asked about 12 people and to run as VP, and I think he was the first person to say yes. So I think that just about any other rising star in the Democratic Party, someone like a Shapiro or the governor of Bashir of Kentucky. I think he thinks, you know what? Why am I going to waste my shot on running for VP when I can just wait 4 years and run for president myself? So I see it as, someone like Waltz feels like he's probably never going to be president, so might as well run for VP.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got Whitmer, you got Newsom, you got Andy Bashir of Kentucky, Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Buttigieg. I mean, all five of those people are young. I mean, they're young guys. And Waltz, he's 60, but he looks a lot older. I mean, am I missing something? I mean, he is 60. He's actually just slightly older than Kamala Harris, but boy, it looks a lot more. But anyhow, the guy does have, I've seen him out on the stump, and he's got a lot of energy. So look, the people of Minnesota, he was their governor, and there were some pretty left-wing policies in that state. So eventually, folks, I do believe the Democratic Party will get around to talking about what they believe in. but we may have to wait a little while for that to happen because you listen, Woody, we have to give them credit. Their identity politics has worked. Kamala Harris, when she was not the nominee, her approval rating was 17 points upside down. Now, Joe Biden wasn't the most popular guy on the planet, but she was viewed as sort of an incompetent, inconsequential, unable to speak, word salad type VP. And frankly, she didn't do that great among the people in the Biden administration. So despite what you may hear that now, oh yeah, she's close to Joe Biden, it wasn't that way for the first 3 years of the administration. Now, all of a sudden, anywhere Joe Biden is, and we haven't seen him much, she's right at his side, a la right at his side when the prisoners / hostages came home. She's sitting in now on situation room meetings related to Israel and Iran. We'll talk about that later. But Woody, her approval rating has gone from -17 to now she's -7. Donald Trump's is about -9. They're pretty close. So what, again, weeks ago was an appearance of complete incompetence has now turned really into an asset. And Woody, like you mentioned, and you've seen it throughout your years as a political consultant, the mainstream media is like a lapdog. I mean, they are putting her up there like Mount Olympus, and I don't see anything stopping that right now.
It's insane how much they can just turn on a dime. Before she was the border czar, and she was screwing that up. And I actually think it was purposeful from the Biden comms team. They wanted Kamala Harris to look bad because they didn't want Biden to be pushed aside. And now that it's happened, they're like, oh shoot, now we got to help her now, right? So we're seeing just there's really thank God for media outlets like yourself that are reporting on the news honestly, because frankly, if you turn on CNN, you turn on MSNBC, just realize you're just watching a propaganda piece for the Democratic machine.
Yeah, I don't think that Dave McCormick ad who's running for Senate in Pennsylvania is going to play on those two media outlets. Speaking of a media pick here, Madam Producer, if we could put that Rick Scott ad up, I think now is an appropriate time because this really accentuates who Kamala Harris really is. So if we can get that Rick Scott ad up.
We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
Yep, they did it all right. Now everything is more expensive.
We did it, Joe.
Yep. Now protesters are chanting death to America and burning our flag.
We did it.
They sure did. They gave money, housing, and health care to criminals, bringing drugs into our country. I'm Rick Scott. They did it. We're going to undo it. I approve of this message.
Woody, as a political consultant, how'd you like that message from Senator Rick Scott?
It's a great ad, almost as good as that McCormick ad. I'd like to say it's the same kind of ad I would cut. So, in particularly in those states, I feel that Rick Scott's running a really good campaign, and I'm pretty excited. I think we're gonna I believe he's gonna keep his seat.
Oh yeah, I'm in your camp on that one. Let me shift a little bit off script here because Rick Scott is running for Senate in the state of Florida, and in his two previous elections, folks, they were decided by a quarter point and like a half point. They were close. Rick Scott is now leading in the polls by upwards 5-6 points in the state of Florida, which really is not a purple state. It is a red state. We've got Marco Rubio. We have Rick Scott, Governor DeSantis, a supermajority in the legislature. People are fleeing those high-tax states, Woody, to come to places like Nevada, like Florida, like Texas. So let's talk a little bit about some of these Senate races. What's your sort of crystal ball on the Senate map telling us at this point in the game?
Well, I feel pretty good about McCormick in particular. Frankly, I feel like he should have been the nominee last time, and I actually think he probably would have won that time. And so I think this is his comeback, and I see him winning that race. As far as the map, I see us winning Ohio. I see us winning Pennsylvania. Nevada, I think we still have some work to do there. But and maybe even Arizona might be a little bit tougher. But as things are going pretty well on the Senate side, on the House side. It's the presidential side that I'm actually a little bit less confident at the moment.
Well, you've got, you mentioned two situations there. You mentioned Ohio. Sherrod Brown currently has a lead of about 3 or 4 points on Bernie Moreno. I had the opportunity to meet Bernie Moreno, terrific guy. Met him down at Kerry Lake fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago when Donald Trump was down there. And Bernie Moreno would make a terrific senator from Ohio, but he's running up against an incumbent, Sherrod Brown. That's going to be a tough one. We have West Virginia with Manchin stepping aside. West Virginia is definitely going to shift from blue to red. And Woody, I got to believe Montana is going to be where Tester, he's been winning them very close. I've got to believe Montana's in play for the Republicans. So despite what Chuck Schumer said, where he said, well, we feel that the Democrats are going to maintain control in the Senate. I mean, by definition, West Virginia is going to turn, that's going to make it 50-50. If we flip Montana, now it's 51-49. And then if we had Pennsylvania, Ohio, Nevada, Kerry Lake, and Arizona, and some others, right now with the presidential race as tight as it is, it's not like what you would call a coattail election. But are these numbers accurate? I mean, can Republicans, based upon what we're talking about here, get a 51-52 position in the United States Senate?
Absolutely. And I just got to keep in mind here, I believe this is the highest that Kamala Harris is going to be. I just don't see her going up from here. It really just gets worse from here. She's in the absolute highest point she could possibly be because she has this big honeymoon effect. She just picked her VP. They're about to go into their convention soon, but I just don't see them really going up from here. Like I said, as some scrutiny will start being applied to her policies, hopefully soon, and we see more ads like that and we see more coverage on her positions like that, then I believe that the things are going to even out and Trump's going to start, coming back on top. But look, at the moment, what's the assessment now? 52% chance Kamala Harris wins. Yeah, if the election were today.
Right. And well, I've seen some betting sites that have Trump at 52, her at 48. I've seen her at 52, Trump 48. Look, the one thing that we're going to dive into this a little bit later in the show, but this is not a national election, as we all know. It's 50 states, and calling it what it really is, 7 states are going to determine the 47th president of the United States. And we've talked at length about that. We've got out west, Arizona and Nevada. Well, Woody's from Nevada. He said right now Harris has a slight lead in Nevada. It's probably true. Arizona, Trump still has a slight lead. Then we shift back to the Midwest, the old blue wall, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Well, I've been saying, ever since anyone would listen, that whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to be the 47th president. I still believe that. Then you go down south. I think Trump will hold his serve in North Carolina. He's currently up by about 3. I saw in Georgia, Trump is generally up 1 to 2 points right now. Woody, I will share this with you. I talked about that a little bit. I really wish when Trump does rallies in Georgia, he would focus on the issues and not attacking a sitting governor who's sitting at 65% approval rating. Maybe that's just me, but what's the old saying? Don't insult the people who are trying to help you. I think he could do a lot better for himself if he really talked about the good things that are happening in Georgia and the good things that happened in Georgia when he was president. So anyhow, let's do this. We're going to take a mid-course breaker, but when we come back, I want to dive into these poll numbers with Woody, who has an extensive polling background, and we'll see where it is state by state, and we'll tell you what Trump has to do and what Harris has to do. Be back shortly.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to talk about a limited time offer of subscriptions to Patriot.tv and how you can become a member of our Patriot Defenders subscription club and become a member of Patriot.tv. Really, it's America's network. I call it the home of truth. And you can do that for only $9.99 a month. It's a great deal by itself, but what I'm going to walk you through here in these next few seconds is a couple of package deals that we have that are unbelievable. The next membership was the annual membership at $99 that you can save. Right away, you save $20 if you come in at the annual subscription rate. The best deal that I think that people ought to seriously consider is the 2-year membership at $159. And it includes a special edition of my recently released documentary, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. So along with the 2-year membership, the 2-year subscription will send you a DVD combo of the film, plus an option to stream the movie online, as well as exclusive interviews of Tucker Carlson, Devin Nunes, and myself. So go to the home of truth, right? Go to Patriot.tv today, sign up, seriously consider the 2-year subscription rate. It's an unbelievable savings. I think it's a total savings of about $70 from just signing up on a monthly or a annual basis. So thank you very much for your support. Patriot.tv is America's new network. Thank you.
And we're back. A special thanks to General Mike Flynn. Listen, folks, we really appreciate your support. For those of you who have signed up to become Patriot Defenders with the great content and support, boy, we really appreciate that. And so many people have been stepped up to support Patriot.tv. So click on Patriot Defenders, become a Patriot member, and we really appreciate that support. So, Madam Producer, if you can put up our projected map, and again, folks, this is Election Edge's projections. This is not anything from any other organization. We use the Real Clear Politics, create your own map scenario. And Woody, I'd like to sort of walk through this with you while we keep the map up on the screen. In this case, we currently have, if you look at the states in red, folks, those total 262 electoral votes. If you look at the blue states, and I'm going to make one live correction here based upon what Woody just told us earlier in the show. We've got the Nevada rated toss-up. It probably is, but let's go off the assumption Woody's right, and because he's in Nevada. That would put Vice President Harris at 247 electoral votes. Now, Wisconsin, anyone that tells you they know what's going to happen there, don't believe them, including any network. Every polling organization has that thing dead even, or a quarter point here, half point there. It is tight as a tick. Pennsylvania, we went into the week with Donald Trump up about 2 points. I've seen some polling showing him now up about a point. That is too close. We've got Pennsylvania in the toss-up. Woody, is there anything on that map that you see differently, or do you think we have it pegged pretty close right now?
I think so. I mean, like I said, I think if the election were today, I do see Kamala Harris winning Nevada. But again, that's just the momentum she has right now. But I would not stray too far from this map. It was, but once I just feel like any presidential candidate says they want to ban fracking in Pennsylvania is not going to do well.
Yeah, I concur with you there. And Madam Producer, if you could put that map back up one more second, I want to talk about a couple scenarios here. All right, so in this map, you've got Nevada as toss up, but even if you give Nevada to Vice President Harris, Arizona is very tight. Let's say Arizona flipped from red to blue. That puts her at 258 if she had Arizona and Nevada. And guess what? Let's just go out on a limb here and say, we know Wisconsin's tight. It is very tight. I mean, no one. It's dead even right now. But for argument's sake, for those of you viewing here, let's give Wisconsin. If that was a blue state, Arizona was a blue state, and Nevada was blue, that gets the vice president up to 268 electoral votes. What does that leave? Is exactly what Woody was just talking about. Pennsylvania. If Donald Trump holds Georgia and North Carolina, and I feel very confident about North Carolina, if it really comes down to Pennsylvania, and you look at the states that Donald Trump could lose and still win this election. He could lose Arizona. He could lose Nevada. He could lose Wisconsin. He's down a little bit in Michigan right now. But if he wins Pennsylvania and Georgia and he holds North Carolina, he has 271 electoral votes and he will be the 47th president. So I think this map illustrates why, despite all of the just fawning of the mainstream media, the accolades, the non-questions from reporters, the just pure adulation, the Harris honeymoon, whatever you call it. I think the thing you said earlier in our show about topping out at this level, I think that's going to be the case, because when Trump came out of the Republican convention, in elections past, people would get bumps coming out of their conventions. But we really didn't see a whole lot of bump for Trump. And frankly, I don't expect a whole lot of bump from Harris coming out of the Democratic convention.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the conclusion we come to is Trump's victory and frankly, Kamala's victory is dependent on Georgia and Pennsylvania. And even if she does so well in Arizona and Nevada, if she doesn't win Pennsylvania and Georgia, she's not going to win. And as long as we hold Pennsylvania, if we hold Pennsylvania and Georgia, we're going to be fine. But with that said, sometimes Nevada is a good litmus test for the rest of the country. I believe Nevada's almost always gone with the popular vote, not always the winner, but I feel that if we can pull it off in Pennsylvania, where I just believe that she just has no appeal outside of Philadelphia to Pennsylvanians. She wants to ban fracking. She supports the Green New Deal. The blue collar working class voters who voted for John Fetterman, but are not going to vote for Kamala Harris. They're going to vote for Donald Trump, or they're going to stay home.
Yeah, I hope you're right about that, and I think the Trump campaign is banking on that. Which again, the Trump campaign is going to go back to Butler, Pennsylvania, where the shooting took place. I think that's going to be a highly covered event. They're going to do a lot of campaigning. One thing, Woody, we haven't really talked about, but I've been somewhat impressed by over the last couple days, the media criticism of J.D. Vance has somewhat died down as people start to realize, hey, listen, for a kid that grew up poor, joined the military, served in combat, served in Iraq, came back, had an Ivy League education, graduated from Yale Law School, wrote a best-selling book, won election to the United States Senate, did all of that prior to the age of 39, and all of a sudden people who are criticizing him are saying, well, wait a second now. If that's not an American success story, what the hell is a success story? And J.D. Vance has been out on that trail. And one thing I really like what he's been doing, Woody, he's been taking questions. He'll stand up there on the podium, whether he's in friendly territory or not, and he will literally sit there for a half an hour taking questions from media, from voters. What are your thoughts now on Vice Presidential candidate Senator J.D. Vance, who maybe had a little bit of a rough beginning, but does seem to be hitting some stride now?
Let's just not kid ourselves. Literally, Trump could have picked Jesus Christ, and the Democrats would have found some way to spin it on why that person's weird or whatever. I think J.D. Vance was a good pick. Frankly, and I've said this before, because J.D. Vance was not a day one Donald Trump supporter. I think, like a lot of Americans, they were kind of psyop to believe in this caricature of who Donald Trump is. And when you look at that caricature, most people aren't going to like that caricature, right? So, and just like I think most Americans will, at the end of the day, like J.D. Vance, come to their senses that our country was better under Donald Trump. Our country was safer under Donald Trump. Our country was more prosperous under Donald Trump.
I want to give, I hate using statistics, but I want to give you some of the things that are influencing this race that we're just talking about. And this is sort of some summaries of some of the recent polling piece, and this is not going to be a surprise, folks. We've talked a lot about this. The numbers are just tightening up a little bit, though. Obviously, on Harris, more Americans think she'll do a little better job than Trump on the abortion issue, but it's not as wide as you would expect, 56-41. They think Harris, by a slimmer margin, 53-47, will handle democracy a little bit better. Now, again, are people really going to vote for president over the democracy issue? I just don't think so. Now, Trump's good news. On immigration, more people trust Trump on immigration, but again, it's tightened up. He used to have a massive lead on it. People still trust him to do a better job on the immigration front. Same thing on the economy. But that lead, which was wider, is now narrow, but it's still leading Trump. And not only that, but they think that Trump, between the economy, immigration, crime, is going to be solid on these issues. Now, here's something good for the Harris campaign. Independent voters are leaning towards her right now, 53-45%. So she has picked up some independent voters. And Woody, the strange thing about it for me, and I'd really like your perspective on this, Joe Biden, when he dropped out of the race, his approval rating was sitting at 37%. Donald Trump had a 3 to 5 point lead in the polls. He was literally, his support was cratering. And that's why Schumer, Pelosi, Jeffries, et al., the money people forced Biden out. And he did go kicking and screaming. You can add into that, Woody. But how in the world does a man who is at 37% approval rating, who we rarely see, all of a sudden Joe Biden's approval rating's up to 46%? Woody, how does that happen when, I mean, the only time I've seen him really is when he came back to the airport. He didn't look that great, welcoming the prisoners and hostages back.
I mean, I think we're just seeing the power again of the legacy media. Everyone got their approved talking points, their focus group tested points. And now everyone's saying, oh, Joe Biden, he did such a great job. And which is delusional. But and also he did a great thing by stepping aside from this presidential run. He's preserving democracy by stepping aside. He's doing the right thing. If he was doing the right thing, he would step down from being president. So, but he's not doing the right thing. He's doing the political thing. He's doing the thing that he's been pressured to do. And he believes that this is the only way to so-called, preserve his legacy. I mean, there was a story that part of the reason why Joe Biden decided to drop out was he was losing in places like New Mexico. Gosh, if we win New Mexico, we're gonna have Reagan level margins, right? So, honestly, switching out Joe Biden for Kamala Harris, I think is more of a reflection of they just wanted a different person that wasn't Joe Biden, and the media machine was prepared to do whatever it takes to get whoever that person is, and it's Kamala Harris.
Well, there's no question about that. I mean, you cannot argue with the numbers, even though there's no policy positions, and it's a lot of, quote, word salad that you've heard. I hate using that word, but that's effectively what it is. Let me ask you this, Woody, along those lines. If Biden, or let me just ask in the form of a question, are the Democrats better off with having Joe Biden as president now, or would they have been better off having him step aside as president too and having her run as the president?
That's an interesting question, Mark, and I'm not quite sure. I believe that they took a small hit on the whole. Well, Kamala Harris has never won a primary. I think that if she became president, despite not being elected to president, the whole democracy talking point would be a little bit more difficult for them. So I do believe that if it from their perspective, I think what they're doing is working. So if it's not broke, why fix it? Not enough people are calling out Joe Biden on the fact that if he didn't feel he was ready to run for president, he shouldn't be president. There just isn't enough people calling him out on this. No one in the real legacy media is calling him out on this. Yeah, I think we saw Speaker Johnston do it, but you're not seeing the same type of vitriol that you saw from MSNBC even saying that Joe Biden needs to drop out. They're all okay with him being president despite him showing on stage that he was not fit to be president.
Well, and I think that's a good move because think about this. If anything really bad happens, and we're going to talk about some bad things that could happen after we come back from the break, but if something bad happened, Biden gets blamed for it, not Harris. So, he's sort of like the glue and she's the Teflon. So I think that whoever's calling the shots in the Democratic Party, Barack Obama, no pun intended. I do think that was the right decision by of the Democratic machine to leave Biden as the president, and that way, anything that she does can be deflected. All right, we're going to take our final break, but when we come back, we're going to get into some of the issues of the day that people are talking about, some of the risks, and what type of surprises could we be encountering.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever.
For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great.
With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
And we're back. One thing, Woody, that a lot of people were concerned about was election integrity, guarding the vote, making sure all the votes were counted, and that voter rolls were cleansed. Madam Producer, if you could put up that proclamation in Virginia that was signed by Governor Glenn Youngkin, that's sort of like the model for, how things really should be, because a lot of states have taken, there it is, executive order, comprehensive election security protecting legal voters and accurate counting. We won't have to get into all the body of it, but basically what that is, it's an effort to protect and make sure citizens who are eligible to vote can vote, and that those who are not eligible to vote don't vote. We're not going to go back and relitigate the 2020 election, but Woody, are Republicans feeling a little bit better heading into 2024? Or are the same risks out there, cybersecurity? I mean, it's always a risk anytime you put on an election. And with the advances in security and in the ability of hackers over the last 4 years, are we in a position where the integrity of this election can come off properly?
Well, it's really interesting. You've seen voter ID get instituted in places like North Carolina, and even the election results seem to be different now for some reason. It's almost like maybe there is some voter fraud going on, right? And voter fraud is voter ID in particular is so popular. I just pulled it in Nevada. It's right now it's polling at 75%, which tracks with the trends. Is that why not have an ID card to vote? And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why the Democrats don't want voter ID. They don't want voter ID because they want illegals to vote. They want voter fraud to happen because it favors them. They put out this whole thing that look, is there a chance of voter fraud? Absolutely. I mean, there's no voter ID in Nevada. There's no voter ID in Pennsylvania. There's no voter ID in Minnesota. Even in Arizona, you don't even need a photo ID. You just need a non-photo ID. So we're still going to see some election fraud, some voter fraud, but As far as like foreign interference or anything like that, that's always been overblown.
Yeah, I concur with you on that. Now, one thing I really am encouraged by is in the 3,000 plus counties, I think there's 3,200 counties approximately in the country, the Republicans have mobilized, and there are going to be a lot of attorneys involved. There will be poll watchers. I have a belief that this is such a critical election, regardless of whether Harris or Trump wins. I think the American people have to, hopefully, the integrity of the vote will be respected such that we don't have the controversies that we had previously. All right, I want to talk about some other like literally hot button issues, Woody, that are literally happening while we're on the air right now. Look, there was a major incursion of the Ukrainians across the Russian border today. Boy, I would not want to be the Russian military chief that had to break that news to Putin. But, here we have a situation where the Ukrainians are becoming the aggressors now. And this wasn't a small operation, folks. This was thousands of troops that did cross the Russian-Ukraine border. Now, why is it a news story? Because while Ukraine has launched attacks, mainly air attacks and missiles into Russia, this is the first major excursion across that border. What do you make about this today, and what type of an effect would this have, if any, on the American election?
It's so interesting. I've been, following the polls on this, and when the Ukraine conflict started, it was almost universally agreed that Russia was bad and Ukraine is good, and that, we should side with Ukraine in this conflict. And now we're seeing that now it's starting to be a lot more, it's starting to head the other way on this. And I think that, people just saw this was going to be closer to, like the Crimea situation. It wasn't going to take as long as it has. I mean, gosh, it's been a long time since Russia invaded Ukraine, and the war's not over. And I believe that Biden's policies have prolonged the conflict, not ended the conflict. So we're in this situation where now now we're Joe Biden and now Kamala Harris is inching us closer to a situation that could escalate into potentially World War III. And I think that, young Americans, anyone under 30 should realize that if Kamala Harris becomes the next president, we could all get drafted.
Oh, there's no question about it. And you look at not only what happened with the Ukrainians crossing into Russia, but let's talk a little bit, Woody, about what's going on in the Israeli situation right now. I mean, you're having frantic efforts, not only by the U.S. administration, speaking to Iran, speaking to Israel, Harris and Biden having to go to the Situation Room to meet with their top military advisors. You actually had Vladimir Putin calling the Iranians, trying to turn the temperature down. And yet at the same time, you had Israelis, members of the IDF, former members of the Mossad, saying, listen, if you know an attack is coming, you're better off attacking first. And look at what the Israelis are facing. A potential barrage of rockets coming out of Lebanon with Hezbollah to the north. You still have the ground invasion taking place in Gaza. And now you have the prospect of the Iranians taking a major military operation against the Israelis. Question is, would the Iranians coordinate it with Hezbollah in Lebanon to where Israel's now having a three-front approach that they have to defend? I know the U.S. sent additional aircraft to support Israel. I know the U.S. is sending an aircraft carrier to be off Israel's coast. But Woody, I know that based upon the nuclear weapons that Russia has, that situation could explode. But this one is in an even hotter situation because literally, imminently, it could be either the Iranians and Hezbollah attacking Israel, or if their intelligence says, hey, we are on the verge of being attacked, I believe the Israelis would go first. What are your thoughts on that, Woody?
I mean, I think you mentioned something interesting. Isn't it crazy that Vladimir Putin's doing a better job de-escalating this conflict than Joe Biden is or Kamala Harris is? We're basically we're exhausting our national security apparatus by without any our own manpower fighting 2 wars, but with our equipment, and it's weakening our country. I mean that I just think that one thing I wish we could do is turn this into more of a national security election, because China was able to send spy craft over the whole country without unabated, with no issues whatsoever. Israel is in a fight for its life. Ukraine was invaded. I mean, this is how many foreign policy failures can you have before you start facing consequences for that electorally?
Apparently more than we anticipate. And I'll add one to it. Think about this. Right after Joe Biden became president, look at the debacle in Afghanistan when we lost 13 service members and we had that just disastrous exit. And then just think about what's going on in the world where we're in right now live. Okay, we got the Russians and the Ukrainians. That has gone on now, folks, for 30 months. 30 months, 2.5 years. We had October 7th in Israel, where over 1,200 Israelis were killed. Did you ever think you'd see the day when the Palestinian Hamas wing of the Democratic Party would be burning flags on college campuses, doing, everything they could to disrupt things? We would have congressmen staying away from the House of Representatives because they didn't want to be seen in any way supporting Israel. We would have 20% inflation under Joe Biden, 20% cumulatively, rampant crime, despite when the Democrats try to tell, crime's down. No, it's not. There's more crime now than there's ever been. Yeah, they may be able to cite a statistic here and there, but Americans are feeling that. And when you have no bail policies or no charge policies, like in California, you don't even get charged with a crime if it's you steal less than $900. And then you have governors like Waltz coming out and promoting this gender change policies for kids. I know some people on the abortion thing, I know where that cuts, but some people advocating abortion up to birth. I mean, these are sort of radical things. And Woody, when I look at the right track, wrong track in the country, wrong track is sitting there at like 66%. 2/3 of Americans think we're going the wrong way. And yet, based on current polling, we've got basically a dead heat or plus or minus 1 point race. I would think with all of those issues, and then the wars, the inflation, I would think that this is Donald Trump's race to win or lose. But Woody, with all those things happening, it is still very tight.
It is, but like I said, I think she is at the peak of the valley here, and as this stuff starts to roll out more, as I think Kamala Harris will, there's really only one way direction to go from here, and it's down.
Yeah, but I do think this is going to happen. I mean, Woody, if the Israeli situation escalates and war breaks out between Iran and Israel, that's not going to be good for the stock market that's already wobbling. I mean, we had Friday, Monday, Tuesday were disasters. Wednesday was a good day for the market. I mean, yesterday was a good day. Today the market was down a little bit, but you like in Japan, you had Japan on Friday, Monday down 12%. Tuesday was up 10%. So when you have financial markets not stable, Woody, if war breaks out, that's going to have a negative effect on an economy that already saw an uptick of unemployment to 4.3%. We got about a half minute left, Woody. Close it out. What has to happen from here for Donald Trump to win this election?
Donald Trump needs to make this about the failures of the Biden-Harris administration and the successes of the Trump administration. It's that simple. And I think that as people get to know Kamala Harris and realize that her policies are completely out of touch with the policies of the everyday American, in particular in places like Pennsylvania and Georgia. So as long as Donald Trump does that and he runs the tape, he'll win. If not, he'll lose. But I'm confident he'll do what he needs to do.
Woody Johnston, thank you for being my guest today. Hope you come back soon. That's it for Election Edge. We will see you tomorrow, folks.